Hi, good morning once again from Cape Town. This time, unfortunately, a very dark and cold Cape Town in true South African reality at the moment, sitting here by the light of a battery-powered light, unfortunately. But that's very much the reality that's settling in, even in the most utopian Cape Town, which is to many such a wonderful, wonderful place to live, and it is. But the realities of long-term governance issues very much settling in, as all too often experienced across Africa. And in times like these, people who can often ask, well, what are my options? And if Carrick have stood for anything over the last 9 years of our existence, it is educating high net worth individuals across Africa as to what their international options are when it comes to their financial planning and their financial future. And today we're talking about citizenship. We're talking about international residency options for African residents. And quite often I get asked, but how exactly does that fit in with the prerogative of wealth advisors that Carrick are? Well, the simple truth is, in the diasporic reality of international global village living, international citizenship isn't becoming a luxury for the wealthy and the rich and famous only. It's becoming a necessity for any upwardly mobile individuals. Because ultimately, savings and pensions and insurances and estate planning and wills, these things are imperative and important. But it's what you have once you have it all that really counts. And that is choice. And nothing provides more lifestyle choices than a second passport, unlocking a unique and independent future for yourself and the following generations. My name is Fred van Niekerk. I'm the General Manager for Carrick International. This is our 5th webinar for the year. And as promised, for people who dial in, this is all about educating. This is all about sharing information, allowing our clients and our prospective clients to make better informed choices. If nothing else, to cut out that know-it-all cousin or the uncle or the aunt or the friend at work who have half a bit of knowledge, but often do more damage by spreading untruths. So today, as we discuss citizenship and residency, I'm joined by my long-term friend, Ilana. Ilana is a co-South African of mine. However, there's one key difference. Ilana, when it comes to citizenship, lives the reality. She's a South African expat herself, living out in Portugal, and absolutely loving her reality, as she's made the move that she's been advising so many people on over the years. Ilana, I've really been looking forward to our webinar today. I've always had so much fun discussing this topic with you over the years. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Fred. Nice to be with you. I had to chuckle when you started with your battery light. I thought when we were doing the planning for this webinar, I surely have this sorted out, because I'm actually working from Malta today. Now, Malta is one of those iconic destinations for people, amazing infrastructure, everything always seems to work. And yet when I walked into my office this morning, the first thing I was told is there's a fire drill today, right at the time I'm supposed to do this webinar. So I kind of hummed and hawed a little bit, and then somebody pointed me in the direction of a Regis office. So I'm sitting about 5 minutes away from my office in Malta, in somebody else's office that they kindly vacated for me. So not everything always goes according to plan. And I think it's these unforeseen things that happens in one's life. So this is kind of anecdotal and a little bit funny, because I was laughing at you and I ended up actually being a potential problem with me. But we do have to think about our futures, and I like how you introduced it to say it's all about optionality. It's about choice. It's about having that choice and knowing where to go. So obviously, since I've moved overseas, I've been an expat for 20 years, but on and off I've come back to South Africa, and it's only last year that I permanently relocated to Portugal. I also hold residency in Dubai, and I'm in the process of applying for second citizenship myself for myself and my son. So I'll cover a little bit of those realities a little bit later. Yeah. But since I've moved to Portugal, it's amazing how many more people actually are calling now and asking me more practical questions, not necessarily always academic. And it's so interesting how people's needs are different and yet the same at so many levels. You know, there's so many different nationalities represented in this call today, but we all share a few of the similar issues, right? So we all talk about security, and everybody's country has different security issues, but it's not just about physical security. It's about the security of knowing that you are welcome somewhere else in the world should you decide to relocate. It's physical security. Are you safe walking home at night? People call me because they want to be more mobile. You know, all of us out of Africa, doesn't matter where we're from, our passports are not particularly strong when it comes to accessing different markets and having that visa-free travel that we need, having the ability to set up businesses everywhere. So mobility becomes a very big issue. For many of my clients, maybe because I work with so many of your clients, they always have investment in mind. So very often the first question or the first thing somebody would say to me is, I'm a loyal Zimbabwean, or I'm a loyal Malawian, or I'm a loyal South African, and I want to make a good investment, and maybe as a bonus I also want something else. But it starts with, I want to make a good investment. And investment means different things for people. It could be a real estate investment. It could be a donation to a government. That means I'm investing in the future and in citizenship. Some people invest in multiple passports and multiple residencies to diversify their portfolio of citizenship and residency. Some people call and say, look, I'm about to retire and I don't want to retire in my own country because I don't feel safe and the healthcare isn't great and the air isn't fantastic and, you know, the weather is bothering me. I want to move somewhere where I can have kind of sunshine all year round. So that lifestyle and health question comes up often. And then mostly, I mean, for all of us, I think for your kids are a little bit younger than mine, but my son is 21 now. He's studying in South Africa. And he's not particularly employable in the rest of the world because he's not mobile. Because he can get a job offer, but the first question people ask is, okay, you've got a fantastic education, but are you mobile? If we suddenly need to send you to the UK to go and do a job, is it going to take us 6 months to get you a visa? But if you have that second passport or residency in hand, it just makes people more employable at a future point in time. So these are kind of the reasons why people get in touch with me, and it doesn't matter where they're from.
And I will immediately say that is echoed by our conversations we have with our clients across all of our offices in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, from our office in Mauritius that very much deals with our clients in Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, you name it. Putting financial planning in place to enable their children to access Chinese, Russian as well, by the way, but also majorly European universities is at the core of so many of our conversations. And what's often missed is exactly what you've mentioned there, a great degree from a recognized developed world university is a very big step in the right direction. But then your CV has to come with a mobile passport. If you've got a passport like in South Africa, we've got a naughty little nickname for the South African passport called the Green Mamba. Why? Because every time you think you can travel the world, it comes back and bites you. Because you're standing in another visa queue, you're standing in another a Schengen visa queue, or whatever it may be. Always just that black spot on your mobility that seriously impairs your decisions when it comes to your global citizenship, if you'd like. That being said, Ilana, I think the word citizenship then leads us very nicely into our next slide, because there is, I've certainly found, quite a bit of confusion out across our clients, even our employees sometimes, when it comes to the critical difference between residency status and citizenship status. Would you mind taking us through those two? Because that then becomes very, very important in understanding ultimately our clients' choices going forward.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I can use myself as an example now. Can we go back to there we go. That slide is good, thank you. If we talk about the difference between the two, citizenship is always a more permanent long-term solution. So that is when you invest in a country or apply to a different country and you receive citizenship. The passport is just one of the benefits of citizenship. So you don't actually invest in a passport, you invest in citizenship of another country. And that citizenship gives you a lot of benefits. It gives you the right to permanently live in that country. In the case of European citizenship, for instance, let's assume you apply for a Portuguese residency and after 5 years you get your Portuguese citizenship. After 5 years you become a Portuguese citizen, but that means now that you hold that passport and citizenship, you are a citizen of Europe. And that means you can live anywhere in Europe. But while you only hold the residency card, so at the moment I'm a resident of Portugal, so I have a residency card. I have 4 years to go before I get my citizenship. But in this first 5 years, my residency card allows me visa-free travel through the rest of the Schengen countries, so through all of Europe. I traveled to Malta today with my South African passport and my residency card, no questions asked. But it's only in 5 years or in 4 years' time, when I get my Portuguese citizenship, that I can permanently move to Malta and live here without having to do any fancy footwork. In the case, for instance, of the Caribbean citizenship gives you significant visa-free travel all over the world, but a Caribbean passport, like a St. Kitts and Nevis passport, doesn't give you the right to permanently live in Europe. It gives you the right to permanently live in what we call the Carrick states, which is 12 islands in the Caribbean, but it only gives you visa-free access to Europe. Residency, on the other hand, oftentimes in Malta specifically, there's a very strong residency program. It can be passed on to future generations. But it is residency, and that means you have to continue to do things to maintain that residency status. Can we move on to the next slide? I want to talk a little bit about the practicality of the differences. So once again, I think it's just, if you don't mind, I'll just use my own situation as an example. So I've tax exited South Africa, which means I'm no longer tax resident in South Africa, but I had to relocate my tax somewhere else. So I've been a resident in Dubai for many years. I was an expat there for many years. I have a business there, I have a residency permit there, and I managed to become tax resident in Dubai. Although at the moment, I'm spending a lot of time in Portugal, so I have my physical residency in Portugal, and ultimately I will have Portuguese citizenship as well as my Caribbean citizenship, which I hope to have next year. So at the moment, I have citizenship of one country, physically living in another country, and I'm tax resident somewhere else. So these things don't all have to be the same thing. You can have, sometimes you're lucky and you can have it all in one place. I mean, you can move somewhere, become tax resident there, get citizenship, and your life is easy. But my life is a little bit more complicated. So you can do all of that. I think one thing in the middle there that we haven't really spoken about much in our calls is citizenship by descent. So when I start a conversation with a client, the first question is always, what does your ancestors look like? You know, do you by any chance have ancestral rights to citizenship somewhere else? Significantly cheaper, a little bit more hassle and a lot of legal work and a lot of paperwork involved, but you don't have to invest in a country if you have ancestral rights to become a citizen. In Italy, for instance, there's lots of countries, the UK, there's lots of countries where you can become a citizen if you have ancestral rights. So that's kind of important for us to establish those questions first. And this comes back to kind of what is it that your clients want? You know, when you ask the question, you know, I started with what do people typically ask me? But it's different for everybody. Somebody wants to make an investment, somebody wants a different future, somebody wants a different retirement spot. So the fact that your neighbor has a St. Kitts and Nevis passport doesn't mean you have to have one. It doesn't mean that ticks your boxes. We have to start with, what problem are you trying to solve? What does your family situation look like? And then we go through the process of how we make this work.
So I can certainly speak for South Africa, because I've certainly been involved over the last 2 decades, or been pulled into conversations where people talk about Australia as a possible destination. I'm going to say that for a particular reason, because shortly after that comes the discussion about, oh yes, there's a point system, and what education do you have, and how much funds can you prove moving in there, and are you going to stay there for a while, and when are you moving, and you have to go for your interviews, and it's very much a very formalized home office type, immigration type process. But let's be clear about it. When it comes to residency and citizenship by investment, this is a completely different kettle of fish. Still official, still in most cases government run, if not fully government supported. So give us a breakdown of what these citizenship programs and residency programs around the world allow you to do.
Yeah, I think this is a nice kind of a cheat sheet for people that don't always think about these things every day. If you look at kind of the big countries, the big dark blue countries, these are all what I would consider immigration programs. So I often get inquiries from somebody saying, like, oh, I want a Canadian passport. But you can't get a Canadian passport without packing your bags and moving to Canada. It's an immigration program. So once you get approval, whether you do it through descent, through investment, through startup business, through education qualifications, once you get that invite to go to Canada, you have to pack your bags and move. Same with Australia, same with New Zealand, same with the US, same with the UK. So these are big immigration programs. They are all residency programs, so there is no direct route to citizenship. It means you have to do whatever you need to qualify. So let's say go through the compliance of either investing or starting a business. Then you get the invitation and you have to relocate. Now, if you're running a big business in Africa and it requires your presence and you don't want to leave, then why on earth would you want Canadian citizenship? Because you have to actually be there to make it work. So that's when the kind of the faster residency or more flexible residency programs come in. So if we look at Europe, for instance, there's multiple residency by investment programs where you can make an investment, you can qualify for that residency and maintain the benefit of residency without physically having to move there. So in the case of Portugal, for instance, the Golden Visa requires you to spend 7 days a year in Portugal in order to maintain your residency. The Spanish Golden Visa requires you to visit once or twice over a 5-year period, and then every 5 years. Greek residency requires an investment and a visit once every 5 years. Malta residency, English-speaking country, very important that we also think about, do I really want to learn another language? I can tell you I'm struggling a bit with the Portuguese, but I'm living there now. I'm going to win this battle. But it's not easy moving to a country where you don't actually speak the language. You know, for many of us, English is already a second language. Certainly is for me. You know, I'm a Burki from the Free State, so English came to me late in life, and now I have to learn another language. So it's quite important that you think about those things. So if we think about all the different residency programs, some of them you can maintain just the residency benefits without moving there. But some of them, if you do ultimately want to qualify for citizenship, you then do have to move. So in Spain, for instance, if after 5 or 6 years of residency and visa-free travel, you decide you actually want to have citizenship, you have to move there and live there and become a tax resident. So spend at least 183 days of the year in Spain for 5 years, and then you can apply for citizenship. Same in Italy, same in Greece. So these countries all have routes to citizenship, but that's why we have to first establish what it is that you need. Do you only need residency? Do you need citizenship? Do you want a second passport? Want to learn another language? That's why I think the Caribbean options are such an easy solution for so many of us. And I would say 90% of my clients start with Caribbean citizenship because it gives them the ability. It takes about 6 months. Don't believe all the marketing material you read. It takes us a good 2 months to put a file together, and then it takes the government about 4 months to do their due diligence and issue your citizenship certificate. So from decision to receiving your citizenship is about a 6 month period. But then you receive your passport, and then you are truly mobile. You can put that passport in the safe. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but you have the security of having it available to use. And then you can always at a later stage become resident of another country or decide where you want to retire. So sometimes it takes 2 or 3 steps to get to where we ultimately want to be. It doesn't all have to happen at once.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna, I know late in our conversation, we're actually going to start delving into specific opportunities out there. We're going to talk about the Caribbean options. We're going to talk about various global options specifically. But before we do that, can we just give you, as our wonderful presenter today, just a moment to tell us a bit more about your company. Your company has, obviously, I've worked with you for a long time, but it would only be fair to give you this platform to tell our listeners a bit more about Latitude and the position you fulfill on the global scene.
Thanks. Yeah, I know a lot of people choose to start with that, but I get so excited about what it is that clients want to do, that kind of who Latitude is often comes later in the conversation. I think it is important though, because there is a lot of companies out there promoting their services at the moment, and the first thing you should do as a client looking into this is have a look if this company actually has credentials. And it's like banking or investment, or whenever you're making a big financial decision, make sure that the company that's offering the service is actually in a position and licensed to help you. So this is a Latitude map of where we have offices. This is a map of where we are allowed and registered and licensed to sell products. So in the Caribbean, for instance, there must be at least 100 companies working in Africa selling passports that don't even have an office in the Caribbean. Goodness knows how they manage to process these files. So you have to make sure, and you can go and check on any of these citizenship agency websites if a company is registered or not. So I think it's important that people do a little bit of homework. So what's nice for me, having worked in this industry for a long time, it's nice having this global footprint, because I can call on different expertise in different markets. I know how all of them works, but I can't be an expert on city programs. So I have a local office that I can call and fine tune a little bit of detail. I have a local office when a client actually moves there or goes for their biometric appointment. Somebody from Latitude or our sister company, Rift Trust, will be there to welcome them, to walk them through. So we've all, the whole company, all of us have been in the industry for a long time. We all qualified, we all experienced. We all live the life we offer to our clients. We all have multiple residency, multiple citizenships, and that is Latitude. I do have a home in Cape Town still, and a child. So sorry, I should put the child before the home, right? I have a son in Africa. So I do often.
Okay, so I guess I just want to bring it a full circle just for a moment, because I think we've mentioned two very important things that I want to remind our listeners of. Carrick Wealth is a wealth advisory, international wealth preservation advisory firm. We assist our high net worth individual clients across the continent in building international wealth preservation strategies, right? Why? Because ultimately we build options, we build choice into our clients' future, security and choice. And once you've built all the wealth you can, once you've built the pension you can, once you've given your children the education of international, the option of international education, the next obvious choice is freedom of mobility, freedom of security, and freedom of lifestyle. But importantly, this is not an immigration type discussion. It is very much a, how can we use your personal wealth to unlock a second passport for yourselves, your wives, your partners, or your children included. The idea here is not that you will have to pick up sticks in Zimbabwe or Lagos or Lilongwe and suddenly disappear into Europe because you're hoping for hoping for French citizenship. Quite the opposite. It's simply through investment unlocking the option of that second passport or that second residency and citizenship program without having to give up your business, your lifestyle, and your choice to remain happily in the African continent. So let's delve into some specifics, Ilana, please. Yeah, this page is made for you, so you take it away.
Our strap line, so by the way, the company marketing strap line is Hello Freedom. So and freedom means different things to different people, right? I think it's a little bit cheesy, but that's exactly what we do. I mean, people want different things, and freedom means different things to people. So the five islands that I mentioned here, these are 5 islands in the Caribbean. They all offer citizenship through investment. None of them require a language test. None of them require physical relocation. All of them take between 3 to 6 months to issue citizenship. All of them give you visa-free access to the UK, to the Schengen, so all of Europe. So it means you can travel visa-free once you obtain this citizenship. It doesn't mean, however, you can take your Antigua passport and think you can permanently go and live in the UK or go and live in Europe. It works similar to a Schengen visa in terms of the access that you get. So you can spend 90 days in every 6-month period in Europe. So it gives you significant mobility. The way in which you obtain these citizenships are fairly similar. They all offer either a donation route or an investment in real estate. Now, the real estate is not something you can live in yourself. These are all government-approved resort hotel developments. So you become a fractional owner of the hotel. You have to hold the asset for 5 years, but the citizenship issues immediately. So you don't have to hold the asset and then eventually after 5 years you get your citizenship and your passport. So the citizenship issues first, and then after 5 years you can dispose of the asset. So all of them allow you to include parents, dependent parents, very important. The parents has to be dependent on the main applicant. It allows you to include children. And exactly how they do it and how they define a dependent child is very different between the islands. So that's once again important when I start the conversation with the client, is to understand how old are the kids, what are they doing, are they working, are they dependent, do they live in your house with you, are they completely separate financial entities. My dad always said a child's only grown up when they move out of your budget. In this case, as long as they're still in your budget, you know, it's good because we can include them in an application. So each of the islands have a slightly different way in how they calculate it. In some cases, you can include siblings, but very specific definitions. So very important for us to understand what it is, you know, what does your family structure look like? How much capital do you want to invest? Because that's also different between the islands. And how long are you happy to have that capital tied up? And it's not the same answer for everybody, right? We sit with the wealth managers and have a look at the client's total portfolio and say, right, we can release so much of the equity to do something, and what's the best way to utilize that capital? So once again, I keep on using St. Kitts because it's the oldest program. It's very popular all over Africa. Simply because it's been there for so long.
Ilana, I'm going to throw in a question or two there, if you don't mind, because we've received some rather slide appropriate questions. The first coming in from Violet Timothy in Nigeria. She wants to, he or she wants to know, is there any age limit to obtaining global citizenship?
No. So that term global citizenship, there isn't a global citizenship passport. So by the way, global citizenship.
In the context of what you're talking about here,
To people becoming more global and more mobile because they have different options. There isn't an age limit. There's a minimum age. You have to be 18. You have to be, you know, legally of age to be able to apply. So if you're 10 years old, obviously you can't be the main applicant. So you have to be an adult to be able to apply. But if you're already 60 or 70 or 75, there's no maximum age for at which you can apply. In terms of including parents and children, every island has a different requirement, and so does the European residency programs. They all have a different requirement for age. So we first look at the family map, and then we look at the wealth available, and then we look at what they want to do ultimately. You know, when you have that solution in hand, what does the solution look like, and then we match it to the right program.
Okay, because that will then go some way to answering Halfan Mkiwa's on a question from Kenya as well. It's a tough one for any professional because he's asking for a definitive answer, which I know your answer is going to be a bit more wishy-washy of, we're going to look at the family group and we're going to consider what you want to achieve. But his question is, which countries do you think are most friendly to families with children when it comes to healthcare and education?
Oh no, there's also there's a few answers. So if you're looking specifically at Caribbean options, Antigua and Grenada both have very good access to universities. So Antigua has the University of the West Indies, and one of their programs specifically offers some discounts on that. Grenada has a fantastic privately owned university. It's a Canadian university called St. George's on the island. So if you are looking for a way to educate your kids in the future at significant discounts, then Grenada is a very good option. If you're looking at the European programs, you have to become a resident of the country to get benefit of the education system, and that is only with local or municipal or government-owned universities. So you cannot, for instance, become a Portuguese resident and send your child to a private school and hope to get a discount. These schools, private schools are, they're businesses. They're not charities.
Yeah.
So you do get access to local schools, which are very good schools. Spain actually has a very good schooling system. Malta probably the best of all of them because it's an English-speaking country, so it's significantly easier for our kids to go to a local or government-owned school in Malta because the education is in English. If you go to a local or government-owned school in Portuguese, you're going to have to learn to speak Portuguese pretty snappishly. So there's answers for that, but it depends once again on how old are the kids, what do they want to study, what are they studying already, where do they want to go in future. If you study in Grenada and you study any line of medicine at that university, you will have a US accreditation because it's a US accredited medical faculty, which is a great plan for people. If you've got kids wanting to study medicine or veterinary science or nursing or physiotherapy, they can go and study at St. George's in Grenada and be qualified to work in the US. So you've already crossed one hurdle to their future employment.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide by asking the following question. So we got another question in from Nigeria. Babajide Samuel Ajay asking very bluntly, is this genuine? Which I'm gonna read out the question because it's wonderfully, it's a perfectly fine question to ask across Africa. I assure you that global citizenship and residency programs are very, very genuine. And as I mentioned earlier, in most cases are actually either designed and presented directly by the government or specifically given to recognized companies like Latitude to market around the world. I think Ilana touched on that earlier by making very certain you're working with accredited and approved companies offering these structures globally. We've got another question here, so I was going to track it down again. How can you, no. Oh yeah, is it affordable for an average Nigerian coming in from Uchechukwe Ukolo? Now, I'm going to move on to the next slide because we've also had a number of questions come in asking about work visas, etc. So what we're talking about here is that middle section of investment for residency and citizenship. Work visas and immigration is on the other side. We don't deal with that specifically. And on the other side is full-blown immigration, where families are looking to get onto a plane with their kids and handbags and baggage and go and live in Canada for 7 years under their immigration program. What we're talking about here again, people, is right in there in the middle. It's talking about investment-driven residency and citizenship, where ultimately our clients retain their lifestyles and jobs and work and directorships in Africa, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, but ultimately through investment unlock a second passport, which creates mobility and security. However, as you can see, as the prices on the screen right now, no, it's not in every man's pocket, unfortunately. But that is where we as wealth advisors do play a very, very important role in understanding what our clients' interest is in this second citizenship. Because if it's purely or mainly driven by wanting to unlock international education opportunities for your children, we can do that without having to go into a citizenship program. If it's purely that's most important at this stage, there are various other options to consider, whether that's international wealth preservation, whether that's a regular saving type option that we do for thousands of clients across Africa. So yes, even if the figures on the screen right now, you're looking at it and going, I was just hoping to send my kid to education, please, we need to talk because we can certainly find an alternative solution. So give us an idea then, Ilana, costs around the world, various programs around the world. What do you have to say?
Yeah, there's so many solutions. So I just picked the most popular ones. Before we move to the slide, I want to respond just to your question that the Nigerian gentleman asked of is this real? And strangely enough, I more often than not get that question out of Nigeria, not anywhere else in the world, but Nigeria specifically. And I think it's a function of how many, what I would just politely call fly-by-night companies there are. You know, every second man and his dog is now selling passports in Nigeria. We have a large office in Abuja. It operates, sorry, not in Abuja, in Lagos. It operates under the RIF Trust brand, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Latitude. So when we deal with our clients in Nigeria, they actually are encouraged to go into our office to go and visit the team there. And we have a very unique setup there in terms of helping clients obtain all their documentation, because Nigeria is renowned for having interesting civil documentation, you know, that's sometimes rather fabricated. So it requires very specific skills to be able to put a good application together. And if you are not using an agency that knows what they're doing, you'll submit your application and you'll be rejected, and you'll never be allowed to apply again, because once rejected, that's it, you're toast. So it's very important that that initial work is done properly. So yeah, very much a legitimate business, sir, and you're welcome to reach out to me after the presentation. I'll introduce you to our country head, although he's in Malta with me today, so you won't be able to meet him this week, but he'll be back next week. So if we talk about residency, the residency programs all across Europe are a little bit more expensive. The lowest cost entry into permanent residency in Europe is through Malta, where the minimum, and this is a donation to the government, so the minimum donation to government is 100,000 euros. And in addition to that, there's costs and fees depending on the size of the family and whether you are buying or renting a property. But what makes Malta so unique is that it's once that residency is issued, it's permanent residency for the main applicant, the spouse, both sets of parents, and the children, and it passes on to future generations. So these children that you're including in your Malta permanent residency now can eventually include their spouses, can eventually include their future children as well. So it's a very nice way to do succession planning for your family in a safe English-speaking country. So Malta is very, very popular all over the world, specifically for those reasons. Greece is a fantastic option if somebody just wants visa-free access to Europe and they want to make a good investment. The Greek market is on such a steep recovery curve. You know, they were just recovering and then slumped a bit during COVID, and that market is flying now. I've spent a lot of time in Athens and that whole kind of Attica region in the last few months. There's so much development going on. So if somebody comes to me and says, I just am so tired of applying for visas when I travel to Europe, I need a bit more mobility, but I want to make a good investment, then we look at Greece. You're going to get good capital growth, you're going to get a good yield, you're going to get visa-free access, and it's a very quick solution. It takes 2 to 3 months to issue a Greek residency permit. Canada's included there, but Canada is a startup visa program, so that once again that's immigration. Spain and Portugal both have good golden visa programs. The UK has a very good startup visa program. Once again, this is important. You will often see companies advertising that they can do this for you for 30 or 40,000 because that's the minimum legal requirement to invest in a business. But the actual cost of moving to the UK and setting up this business and being successful, because that's a requirement, the business has to be successful, otherwise your visa is not renewed, is not 20 or 30,000 euros. You need to be able to invest about 300,000 pounds rather to be able to make a business work in the UK. So if you're scraping together your last 20,000 pounds, I think it's best invested with Carrick in an investment plan for a year or 2 or 3 or 10 until you've accumulated enough funds to relocate. The last 2 programs are tax residency programs. So Anguilla and the Caymans are both their residency, very difficult to get to citizenship, but people use them for tax purposes specifically.
Yeah. Ilana, let's lift this off the page a bit. We've been there's a lot of theoretical information we're sharing with our clients there and our listeners out there. Let's lift this off the page a bit. I asked you to prepare 3 case studies for us, and thank you very much for doing so. So just for a moment, all our listeners out there, pretend that you were the following client applying specifically for residency in Malta. Talk us through this case study, please, Ilana.
Yeah, so I have quite a few clients that's done this from different nationalities. So by the way, the Malta agency at the moment tell us that they are processing 100 applications every month just for Malta residency. So it is a popular program, and clients come from all over the world. You'll be surprised to know that they come from the US, from Canada, from Australia, from New Zealand, you know, all these countries that we hold up as amazing places we want to go to. Those people also need more mobility. They also need to escape something. So in terms of Malta, for me, this is a very good program. If somebody says to me, I just want to live in a safe country. I want to feel at home. I don't want to learn another language. I want a bit of visa-free travel. I want to be able to work. Very important. Not all the residency programs that you invest in gives you the right to work in that country. So for instance, Greece doesn't come with a work permit. If you invest in Greece, you're doing it because you're investing and you're not looking for a job. But if you invest in Malta, you can put your kids in an English-speaking school. You get a job permit, you can work. There's a lot of gaming companies all over. There's a big IT sector, there's a big financial sector. So this particular family wanted to move here, South African family in this case, they come from Gauteng. The husband is an IT, so they made an investment. They moved here with a dependent adult parent, so grandma moved with them. And their kids are a little bit older. Their kids are in their late 20s, early 30s, both of them, and already married. So they couldn't include the kids in their application, but we did other visas for the kids. So we brought mom and dad and grandma on the investor visa. Dad immediately started working. Mom started creating other businesses. You know, South Africans are creative, so she's got a whole bunch of things going. She's also still running her business in South Africa. And both their kids and their spouses and one grandchild, we moved on nomad visas. So that was a nice combination of things. They're very Afrikaans, so they do speak English, but this was a country where they felt they would comfortably assimilate because they didn't have to really struggle with, you know, learning a Latin or European language. So that there's a couple of videos. I'll post something on my LinkedIn. You guys are welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. I'll post an interview that we did with this particular family. It's quite interesting to hear their stories. Let's look at the next case study.
That's great. So why move to Spain?
Yeah, so Spain is interesting. We have a very good product. We created a finance product in Spain. So if somebody really wants Spain residency, but they don't have €500,000 to invest, we can actually do it for 350,000 euros. So I'll spend a bit more time with with somebody in person. But in the case of Spain, people invest there because it has excellent commercial real estate with high yields. And you also get visa-free travel to all of the Schengen. You get the right to live, work, and study there. It ultimately leads to citizenship if you move there. So my last family that did this specifically came to me with the question of, they said they had €500,000. They wanted to make a good investment. They wanted to include the kids. They wanted the kids to have the ability to live and work and potentially study in Europe. And they really, really liked Spain. So, you know, sometimes it's as simple as, I really like this place, make it work. And sometimes people have different requirements. So it doesn't have to be too prescriptive. We take a lot of things into account before we make the recommendation. But Spain is good from an investment point of view. The commercial real estate there have very low transfer costs. The yields are higher than residential. And the whole investment process is very simple and easy to maintain. Visa-free access to Europe and a passport at the end of the day if you're willing to relocate and learn to speak Spanish. I think Spanish is a little bit easier to learn to speak than Greek, for instance, because you can get Greek citizenship.
It's all Greek to me, Ilana. It's all Greek to me. Right, sorry, that was immensely cheesy, but okay, let's move on to the final one then. All too often in Africa, you know, this one was always the very first time you presented me with the Caribbean being an alternative for African high net worth individuals. My first question was, but why? What do the Caribbeans get that we don't? How is their passport or their residency so much more worldly than ours? And I think our listeners will be surprised as I am.
Well, if you think about the Caribbean islands, I mean they're so small. So often people would say to me, "But why would I get citizenship in St. Lucia or Antigua? I don't want to live there." Who doesn't want to live on a tropical island? But you know, point is, people have their lives in Africa and maybe their businesses in Europe, and they don't really want to relocate to the Caribbean. So as a plan B, safe haven, somewhere to escape to if things go wrong in my country, this is not necessarily the answer. A European residency permit program works better for that. This works, and this particular case I had in mind when I put these things down. I had two families, both of them elderly gentlemen. I hope they don't listen to this recording. Sorry, guys. But they're a little bit older. Their kids were in their late 20s, but still studying. Both couples had kids still studying medicine and pharmaceutical studies in the other case. They all love to travel, and they were just tired of getting in the queue and waiting and not being mobile. So in both their cases, they went for Grenada citizenship. Specifically, the first guy went for Grenada because we had an amazing real estate project there that he just loved, and the second guy was his best friend and just followed him. So there wasn't a whole lot of conversation. He just wanted to do the same thing his friend did. But in their case, they had the same requirement. They had older dependent children. They wanted the mobility. Both of them were doctors, so they really actually liked the idea of Grenada and the medical faculty there, and maybe potentially one day having their kids or their grandkids studying medicine there. And all these Caribbean islands are members of the Commonwealth, which gives them that visa-free access to the UK. So that's one of the main attractions of Caribbean citizenship. So right to live in the Caribbean permanently, visa-free access to the UK, visa-free access to the Schengen, and in some cases some education opportunities. So this for me should be the first. This should be the first, if you can afford it and you can make the investment. This is the best way to kind of future-proof yourself against all the turmoil that we have all over the world. Having that second citizenship and that passport in the safe is good. In the case of these two guys, they were just looking for less hassle travel. But that's a good enough reason.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a highly academic reason to get citizenship.
Okay. Right, I gave you the impossible task of trying to summarize all of this information into, if there's one slide, if there's one bit of information that our listeners can take away with them, Ilana, summarize it for us as follows. Please give us the last word and pull this all together.
All right. I think when you start, and I mean everybody's on this call because they were interested in something in the topic. There was something that attracted them. And unlike the two gentlemen where the one followed the other because they've known each other for 40 years, you don't have to make the decision the same way. I think for me, probably the very first question, and sometimes in our culture it's very rude to ask, the first time you meet somebody, to say, how much money do you have? But literally that determines where you can go. So for me, it really is a question of how much capital do you want to spend on this? So just as you're sitting there, think a little bit about how much would you pay or invest to solve all the different problems that you think you'll solve for this. So how much capital do you have? How much time do you have? If your kids are a little bit older, it's too late to do a residency program in Europe. If your kids are already in their 20s and you need citizenship and you need to make them mobile, then the Caribbean is a much faster solution. Do you actually want to relocate? If you tell me you definitely don't want to move, then why are we talking about Canada or the US? If you don't want to move, then those immigration programs are not an option. Do you want to learn another language? Very, very important question. If somebody says to me, I want a Portuguese passport, but I have no chance of speaking Portuguese, then you can't have it. So please don't do it. Let's look at something else where language isn't a requirement. And then what are your priorities? I mean, those remain the most important thing. Why are you doing this? Are you doing it to plan for your kids, for your future, for your business, for mobility? Do you want to make a good investment? What's your timing? This for me is kind of is the starting point of all of these conversations.
Yeah.
Think about these things, and then we can find a solution that suits you.
Fabulous. Ilana, we've got a few questions off the panel that I've picked up here. The first is from Mark Stein, but I'm going to combine Mark's question with another gentleman. Ooh, these questions coming in thick and fast at the moment. Sorry, I can't find your name right now, but there was another gentleman specifically talking about the Portugal option. Would you like to just close the door on that one? Unfortunately, and I think I've given our listeners a bit of a prequel to that one.
Yeah, look, the Portugal Golden Visa Program has been under threat since the middle of February. Parliament sits in 2 days' time, or tomorrow. When is the 19th of May? I think it's tomorrow. They sit tomorrow to determine exactly how they're going to treat the Golden Visa going forward. So I'm still submitting applications. I submitted one today. this morning. So the program is still open, but for Africans, it's so difficult to open bank accounts now that it's become really a tight timeline. There are other solutions though if you're a business person in Portugal, so we don't have to talk just about the golden visa. But it is certainly, it's still open, but there's so much uncertainty about how long it will be open, what the timelines are. I think it's quite risky to make, to just go ahead and make that investment. We need to spend a bit of time talking about that. So that's nobody really knows. Parliament sits tomorrow and they'll tell us what they're going to do.
Yeah. Okay. Again, it's one of those. It's everybody becomes interested as soon as it isn't available. But yeah, please get in contact, Mark. Get in contact. And this is a message to Mark and to everybody out there. Sorry, Ilana.
Yeah, programs change. I mean, that's terrible, but programs change. You know, Ireland closed their investor program. Portugal's closing theirs. Bulgaria's come and gone. Hungary's come and gone. These programs are not always available. So if you've been thinking about this for a while and you can afford it, then make these investments while the programs are available. They're not always going to be available. And once citizenship or residency is granted, it can't be taken away from you. So don't dally.
Absolutely. So Mark, my best advice to you, Mark Steyn, and sorry, the other gentleman who was also asking about Portugal, if you're not happy with that answer, because it didn't, well, I guess it wasn't what you wanted to hear. The email's on the screen right there, and this goes out to all listeners. Please reach out at webinar@carrickfs.com. It's a centralized email where your question will be assessed as to whether it comes out to us as a wealth advisory firm or directly to Ilana to talk about citizenship and residency programs. And I guess that goes for a number of other questions. I think Chimizai Nahegu, I can answer your question very quickly. Ilana, I'm correct in saying that in most cases, these residency programs expect lump sums to be paid as opposed to payment schemes over time. If there's an amount to be paid, it's a case of writing a check per person for the family.
Yeah, the funds have to be available for transfer at the beginning of the investment process. You are allowed to mortgage, for instance, or to release capital, but you have to be fairly financially secure to want to gear against your own assets back home to invest in something like this. So on the receiving end, it has to be capital available.
Yeah. Okay, then I've got a number of questions from a number of countries, including Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania. I don't know why it's all East African, but all asking whether these programs are available to them. And perhaps it's a reminder then that what makes the investment programs that Ilana is specifically representing rather unique here, that this is about you and an investment as opposed to your CV, your professional position in society. All too often we hear the question, well, I'm a qualified doctor, can I apply for residency? You can be a mechanic, you can be a street sweep, you can be a doctor. It's about investment to qualify. And the same then goes for university qualifications, the same goes for your current nationality. All of these become irrelevant. They might be relevant when it comes to immigration programs specifically, but in these cases, it's through investment. So it's a fund-driven, money-driven investment.
I think the countries where Carrick has offices and the clients that you've invited today are all good, but there are nationalities that are prevented from applying for residency and citizenship. So that would be nationalities that have international sanctions against them. So at the moment, very difficult for Russians to do anything. It's always been very hard for Iranians. There are some nationalities that are prevented from applying, but that's because of international sanctions. For the rest of us from kind of sub-Saharan Africa, we good. We can pretty much do anything anywhere provided we can afford it. And the funds have to prove the source of your wealth. So I discovered the money in a box under my bed, yesterday is not a good answer. The due diligence questions are quite stringent, and you have to prove where the money comes from.
Yeah. Right, so unfortunately we don't have time for all the questions. We promised on all the invites we would only keep you busy for 1 hour, and we're about 3 minutes short. Please, if we haven't got around to answering your questions throughout the discussion, if I haven't picked up your question specifically because you've sent it in by now, again, on the screen right now, webinar@carrickfs.com. Please feel free to send your emails. We will categorically get to answer every single query. Okay, we commit ourselves to that specifically, whether it's to our benefit or not. I think I want to finish off by explaining my own little history on earth, if you'd like. I've been in the industry for 24 years now, and the first 10 years of which I was living and working in London, UK. And due to 10 years of residency and working, I went through their visa program. It was first an initial a 2-year visa, then a 5-year visa, and then ultimately after 7 years qualified for residency, and then finally citizenship as well. I then happened to marry a British wife who would have been my plan B to get a British passport, but she didn't know it at that stage. No joking. Right. Okay, so after 10 years of living in the UK, I returned to South Africa with my British wife and my 2 confused kids. All of us having dual citizenships, all of us walking around with both the green mamba, the South African passport, which is all too handy as I travel all across Africa, because it's the one continent where my South African passport is more powerful than my British one. But of course, as soon as I bought a plane to go to Europe or go to the UK or go to Australia, out comes my maroon UK passport, and suddenly I'm more British than the Queen herself. That's making very light of the power of 2 passports. I can bear witness to all listeners out there that the ability to access the rights of a second passport, whether that's my residency, whether that's my career choices, whether it's my children's education choices, whether it's my access to international medical care, whether it's my long-term planning, whether it's my safety net in the background, whether it's my ability to take more risk in Africa and more commitment to Africa, because I know there's no such thing as overcommitting, because I've got that second passport. The power and the peace of mind is worth more than money can buy. It's an extraordinary position to have, and I feel incredibly blessed and fortunate to be in that position, and to know that Ilana can make that real for our clients out there across Africa is just fantastic. Ilana, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us today. You, ma'am, have been my 5th panelist this year and one of my favorites, if not my most favorite, because you've been so involved, so willing, and so energetic regarding the whole project. So from me, on a very personal note, thank you, ma'am, and thank you for spending the day with us.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. I look forward to meeting all of your clients.
Fantastic. And then to all the listeners out there, thank you so much for dialing in. I can see someone dialing off already. We're on the hour, as good as our word. Thank you very much, and I'll see some of you in a month's time, sorry, as we will have our second webinar launched at that stage. So thank you very much, everybody. Time to sign off, and we'll see you in a month's time. Thanks, Ilana. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.